Well, good morning. It's a beautiful morning indeed. Yes, this week happens to be the most important week in the history of Nigeria, one of the most important weeks in the history of Nigeria. And I'm talking about the elections that will be happening, this weekend. But all the same, it feels good to be here, and it feels good to know that, such a big, a memorable event would be happening in Nigeria, and we'll get to witness it once again. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Thank you for tuning in to Daybreak on Trust TV. We're live in the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning, Dasha. Is this a very good morning indeed? Lovely Monday morning.
Yes.
And we're right here trying to make sure that the week gets off to the best of starts,
Yes,
as
indeed.
usual. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Welcome to Daybreak. And of course, just like Dashan said, it's a very, very important week, and we're looking forward to the polls this coming Saturday. And of course, it's a very pivotal time in Nigeria's history whereby we could get the opportunity to make a choice as of who leads this country. Which is
next
very,
4
very,
years, very important.
Very, very important.
Very
I mean, like it
important.
decides for the it's a one-day thing, but decides the next 4 years. That's how profound it actually is.
Yes, it is. All right, so moving on, let's take a look at the highlights at this particular hour. 2023 polls. Southeast elders tasked authorities to stop killings.
And 400 billion naira cash. EFCC denies raiding Tinubu's home.
Iheanacho fires blank as Manchester United rout Leicester City.
All right, now the details. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has denied raiding the home of the presidential flag bearer of the All Progressive Congress, Bola Tinubu. It also said it did not retrieve any 400 billion naira either from the candidate or his residence. It described a trending report on social media as fake news. The Commission's head of media and publicity, Wilson Owujaren, made the clarifications in a statement. And the statement reads, the attention of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has been drawn to a report circulating in the social media claiming that operatives of the Commission raided the home of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, standard bearer of the All Progressives Congress, in the forthcoming presidential elections and recovered a humongous sum of 400 billion naira.
Away from that story, the elders in the southeast have called on the various authorities and security agencies to stop the ongoing killings and threat to the conduct of the 2023 general elections in the zone. Now, in his message, elder statesman and chairman of Council of Elders of Ohaneze Ndibo worldwide, Emmanuel Iwanyau, cautioned all separatist groups in the southeast to give peace a chance so that the region can participate in the 2023 general elections without hitches. Similarly, former Minister of Health, Professor Ihechukwu Madubuike, said it was high time the legitimate authorities of the state began to show their strength and ensure the citizens that no group of non-state actors will be permitted to disrupt the peace, especially the general elections in the southeast. On his part, former chieftain of the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, Ralph Obioha, urged the residents of the zone to ignore any threats to boycott the general elections and come out to exercise their franchise, especially now that a candidate from the zone, Peter Obi, is contesting for the office of the president.
And in sports, Kelechi Iheanacho failed to continue scoring form as Manchester United overpowered Leicester City in 3-0 in a Premier League match on Sunday. Marcus Rashford has been the key to United's impressive form in Ten Hag's first season, and the England forward proved too hot for Leicester to handle at Old Trafford. Rashford has scored 24 times in all competitions for United this season, the highest goal tally he has ever managed in a single campaign. Remarkably, 16 of those goals came in 17 appearances since he returned from the World Cup in December. 25-year-old is also the first United player to score in 7 consecutive home games since Wayne Rooney in 2010.
All right, with that, we're done with the highlights at this hour. Let's now take a look at some more stories. Some communities in Katsina State are without primary school and other basic amenities decades after the return of democratic rule. Now, Walowal and Wawia farming communities in Dutsi local government area of the state are some of such communities. Abdullahi Amadi meets residents of the two villages and asked how they feel about democratic governance, especially now that Nigerians head to the polls on Saturday.
Wawia and Warol villages are communities of over 5,000 people in the heart of the local government area of Katsina State, but are without primary schools, good roads, or basic facilities. The communities have not enjoyed dividends of democracy since its return in 1999, despite their active participation in the political processes. Worried by the continued neglect of their communities, residents organized their school-aged children, taking formal and non-formal lessons under these makeshift classes.
Na ba da wannan shago kuma muka samu kara aka yi danni aka dora musu ana koya musu.
As far as we are concerned, we have been neglected, abandoned, and forgotten. Our number one problem is school, then water, access road, clinic, and other social amenities. But for now, our priority are those things I listed. Sometimes we feel like mobilizing ourselves not to go out and vote.
Mu ba mu amfani da komi ba.
Ba hanya dai a Wawuya, babu asibiti, babu makarantar boko, babu makarantar Islamiyya.
To me, your visit to our village is enough for me to thank God Almighty, because all my life I have never seen media people here.
Ina godiya ga wannan gidan talabiji mai albarka wanda ya ziyarci garin Wawuya, Allah shi saka mai da alkhairi.
So to me, it's mission accomplished. I humbly believe this is the end of our struggle. Thank you, Trust TV.
Irin TV center din nan wallahi ba mu da shi. Ba mu da ma'aikacin gwamnati ko kwara guda wallahi a Wawuya.
The children are defying the harsh weather conditions to attend classes in spite of cold during Harmattan season in most parts of northern Nigeria. Tired with several unfulfilled promises by their representatives of providing school and other basic facilities, residents resorted to making contributions to fund this unofficial makeshift primary school. This is in addition to contributing money for the regular rehabilitation of their dilapidated access road and the only open well that provides water for drinking and other domestic purposes.
Malama.
My ambition is to be a classroom teacher. For me, I want to become a professional journalist to serve as a voice to the voiceless. Sir, for me, I want to be a professional doctor to help my community. There, however, appeals to the relevant authorities, including the Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadis Rika, who hails from the area, to help them get out of the woods.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
And to Benue State now, where the farming community in the state is yet to recover from the 2022 flood that destroyed farmlands and other livelihoods, even as Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has predicted yet another flooding this year. Now, against this background, farmers in the state have intensified calls on the government to be proactive to avert further damages. Let's take a look.
15 out of the 23 local government areas of Benue State were adversely affected by the floods in 2022, raising concerns over food security in the state. With the latest NIMET predictions, experts in the agricultural sector said the way forward is for farmers to engage in dry season farming. This, they said, is the only way to make up the loss. The State Ministry of Agriculture said government is already planning in that direction.
As farmers are educated on the need, you witnessed what happened in the state as a result of flooding. A lot was lost, so a gap is being created. But with dry season farming, we are expecting that that gap will be filled. People are going to produce out of season. And if that continue, you understand, we shall no longer rely on rain-fed agriculture, but we go into irrigation farming.
However, the farmers said they need proper funding or incentives from the government to practice dry season or irrigation farming.
Except the federal government provides enough security, and also provide farm inputs for farmers. Farm inputs such as herbicides, fertilizer, farm machineries, tractors, and improved seedlings. If that is done, I am very sure that we can be able to come back here and do dry season farming.
I think it will be done and it will help the masses. What I mean by the masses is generally with farmers. Government should intervene to help. They will give support. If not, there will be hunger.
To people who live close to the river is that they should prepare. They should prepare because this thing happened last year. So they have to prepare before the time. Government, they have to pass message to those people because some of them they will not be aware of what is going to happen. But if the message reach them, then they will now prepare to be out of that place before the flood will now come. Farmers should learn how to work in a dry season because if they cannot work in a dry season, as far as this flood is coming continuously, it will affect lives. So they should do their best to work also in dry season. It will help us.
According to records from the Benue State Emergency Management Agency, SERMA, thousands of Benue farmers were affected by the flood disaster in 2022.
All right, moving on to more stories. The new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, has given police in Kano a 24-hour ultimatum to release its members or face a statewide protest. Addressing a news conference, leadership of the party accused the ruling APC in the state of using the police to sabotage the forthcoming elections. Now, Trust TV correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that the party said police illegally arrested and detained more than 100 of its members in the state. Police could not be reached for comment. The report.
According to these leaders of the opposition New Nigeria People's Party in Kano, available evidence obtained by the party reveals that the state government is currently using the police commissioner to frustrate the party through illegal arrest and detention of their members across the state, an act they say will likely threaten the conduct of the elections.
At this critical time, any responsible government will be concerned with the fragile security situation as Nigeria heads to the 2023 general election in the next few days. While we appreciate the stand of President Muhammadu Buhari on his resolve to conduct credible elections through the provision of level playing ground for all candidates across all the 18 political parties in Nigeria, it is unfortunate that the Nigerian Police Command in Kano under CP Mamman Dauda is working deliberately and in cahoot with the Ganduja administration in Kano to subvert the elections.
Part of the NNPP latest demand includes the immediate release of their members currently under police custody, immediate redeployment of the police commissioner in charge of Kano Command, and a level playing ground for the peaceful conduct of the elections.
We wish to unequivocally state that NNPP is giving all the authorities concerned a notice of 24 hours to release all our members, stop harassing our members and leaders, and direct the Kano Police Command to stop campaigning for the APC. At the expiry of the 24-hour notice, we will lead all our members to a peaceful protest across all the 44 local government areas in the state.
Although the New Nigeria People's Party say it has still not lost confidence on security officials, neither plan to boycott the elections, but it's planning to withdraw its assent from the peace accord it has earlier signed.
We signed the pact because we love Kano, we love Nigeria. The intent of the peace accord is for us to have free, fair and credible election. Everybody must exercise his own part. Everybody must make sure that he protect the integrity of our laws. If police, who are the critical stakeholders in this election, after INEC, police are the most critical and they are biased, how can you expect us to continue respecting any peace accord? We can't do so. And we are sending signal to them for them to draw their attention.
In the next 24 hours, These party leaders and their supporters may likely storm the street of Kano if their demands are not met by the federal government and of course the ruling APC. Idris Jubrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
Now, operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps are investigating a suspected vandal of electrical installations arrested at Gangagari village of Daura local government area in Katsina State. The 27-year-old Isa Hussaini was arrested while vandalizing a high-tension electricity transmission pole. Abdullahi Yamadi completes the story.
The NSCDC operatives in Katsina said the suspect was arrested in possession of 4 pieces of angle iron, 4 pieces of bolts and nuts, washers, hammers and screwdrivers, among many others.
He was arrested with iron and angle iron rod. You will find it, you know, the high tension, those big poles that transmit electricity to different parts of the state, from local government, from here to another booster station or power station, then from another state to another state.
The suspect, who claimed to be a scavenger, confessed to have committed the offense. He, however, narrated that he was looking for scrapped metals when he noticed that some of the components of the pole were loose and decided to remove them. My existence depends largely on scavenging. Before now, I was a successful businessman, doing very well. But following some harsh economic realities, I lost everything and resorted to scavenging. I pray and hope that one day I will have capital to go back to my business. In the process of committing the crime, members of the community mobilized and arrested the suspected vandal, handing him over to NSCDC operatives. The NSCDC command in Katsina says it has concluded all investigations and the suspect will be charged to court of competent jurisdiction for prosecution, while reassuring residents of its commitments to safeguarding all critical national assets. The NSCDC command in Katsina warned scavengers and scrap dealers to be mindful of what they take or buy. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Marriage is a sacred institution where couples are joined to be lifetime partners. However, divorce is becoming common between married couples. Now, Silas Lowen takes a look at the causes fueling divorce among couples. His report.
Good or bad, it is a cross to bear till date do them part. However, the story has changed, and rapidly too. Marriage is no longer sustained by couples like before. Many say lack of commitment, infidelity, or extramarital affairs, too much conflict and argument, and lack of physical intimacy play significant roles. According to these respondents, based on what is obtainable from the society, religious bodies, and records at marriage registries and court, divorce cases are increasing.
Both outside what is obtainable in the court and what is obtainable in the court. You find out that marriages are breaking down irretrievably these days, which is most uncommon. And it is most unfortunate. It's not just about the ceremony on the wedding day. It is about the burden after the wedding ceremony. That is the marriage. You know, it is not about the wedding ceremony.
A court might actually enter to see that maybe the woman has been given an opportunity, or they will give her an ear, so that whatever she said, the court may likely try to find out the reason why the man divorced the wife. But in our own perspective, we try to find out the reason from the husband, and we encourage endurance and patience, because that is what we will be able to do in the family, and then our marriages will sustain.
They said some couple complained of incompatibility, lack of love and care, poverty and frequent beating.
The religious leaders are trying their best, And one of the reasons or one of the ways the religious leaders are using is to create an avenue where they will interact with the family members and give them understanding on what to do. If there is any problem, they look for the religious leaders to help them to overcome all the challenges. And the church also is looking for an avenue to organize seminar, especially for the couples, so that they will be enlightened on what to do.
Marriage is about fidelity. Marriage is about giving confidence to the other. Marriage is about bringing the other close by giving him attention or giving her attention, cozying up to each other. This is non-existent, and it is all because the family values has broken down. The proper upbringing that ought to be given to children, coming to terms with the realities of building a home is non-existent.
According to statistics, 0.2% of men and 0.3% of women had legally dissolved their marriage. A report in 2018 indicates that separation rates in Nigeria recorded 14% increase. Salis Lawan, Trust TV News, Yola.
Okay.
All right, quite an interesting one there from Silas Lawan. Looking at the rate of divorce, it's something that is quite alarming when you look at it.
It is. Everywhere you turn, almost everyone, is finding it difficult to stay in their marriages, and I don't know what the problem is. There's so many issues, though, and when you ask them, they say irreconcilable differences, and all that. But then, is there any difference that cannot be reconciled if two heads actually if two heads actually come together?
It all depends on individual circumstances. You understand? What might be reconcilable to one couple might not be to another. So it all depends on who's in it. So you have to be in it to actually figure out what the situation is and how to be able to remedy it, because there's actually no blanket template for that. So it just depends on the situation, the individuals involved, and how they take to.
And being deliberate about staying in the marriage is also something that
no matter how deliberate you are about it, if there's no equilibrium, if you can't find a common ground to actually do that, then no matter how deliberate you are, it doesn't really make any sense. And besides, you can choose to stay there, but is it really worth your peace of mind, your happiness?
Not just staying there and working it out.
Exactly. So that's the problem. So that's the problem. So that doesn't matter whether you're deliberate about it or not. It just depends on the circumstances, and of course, what is there for you to hold on to at the end of the day. All right, well, still Daybreak on Trust TV this morning. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take a look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Stay with us.
That's great.
When a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now you're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. It's time for the newspaper review. Let's take a look at what the front page of Daily Trust is saying at this moment. We have the lead story here that talks about insecurity, credibility fears may affect voter turnout. Now we have writers that says candidates eye Northwest's 22 million votes, while previous elections recorded low turnout, says experts. Security, others to determine turnout, says CDD. And right below the story there is an infographic of predictions, registered voters, voters turnout, regions with the highest votes in previous elections, breakdown of registered votes by region, and factors that could affect the turnout. And then more stories. Race to Aso Rock. Atiku, 6-time lucky or last rodeo. You can find details of that story on page 14 and 18. Naira swap. APC backs governors, asks Buhari to obey Supreme Court. We also have elections. Naja'atu, 44 others to monitor police officers' conduct. Details can be found on page 28. And at the top of the page there, 5 days to go. Our expectations from Buhari's successor, says NSCIA. Navy pledges support to INEC in coastal areas. No Christian political party, says CAN. We also have Kwankwaso to APC governors. Your loot now completely useless. On cash crisis, Buhari urges patience, reaffirms support for Tinubu. And then Daily Trust economists says credible elections will boost confidence in economy. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust this morning.
Next, we'll take a look at the Guardian newspaper, and it carries the story on the front page. Tinubu APC governors beg Buhari Malemi to respect Supreme Court. And we have writers here that says from Addis Ababa, Buhari calls for patience over Naira hardship. Banks not ready for 200 Naira payment in cash. Squeeze enters fourth week. Don't reverse policy, expand cashless outlets, according to Adi. And El-Rufai instructs Kaduna MDAs to accept old notes. Merchants mop up old 500 and 1,000 Naira notes and increase minting of NIOO, other lower denominations, and a security expert urges CBN. Atiku Tinubu in last push to sway voters. That is another story on the front page of The Guardian, and that's on page 6. And NIPC moves to improve national branding, FDI, and that is on page 5 as well. Looking at the news belt, Nigeria lost $825 billion to graft in 23 years, says CSO, and Shoyinka distances self from fake quotes on social media. Again, Kaduna asks agencies to accept old notes as lawmaker seeks El-Rufai's arrest. And details of that can be found on page 29. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right, up next is the Punch newspaper. And the lead story talks about 6 days to elections. APC governors, bank CEOs in last-minute rush to clear Naira mess. Writers here says 12 governors, APC chair want Emefiele Malemi to obey Supreme Court order. Naira crisis has brought too much pain at the Mulaments. Ganduje Abiodun absent. And bank CEOs want old notes collection extended to avert protests, attacks on branches. And below that story is a pictorial of the Nigerian president who he participated at a high-level event in reinvigorating Pan-Africanism for a changing world, and held a bilateral meeting with President of Somalia and the Director General of International Organization of Migration in Addis Ababa on Sunday. Below that pictorial, vote for leader with capacity, character, says Oyedepo. We also have Ogun woman set self ablaze over 70,000 naira debt. Details on page 4. Can lament Leah Sharibu's continued captivity. At the top of the page there, we have Buhari, Jonathan, others became president unprepared, says Kuka. Stock investors lose 281 billion naira in 1 week. INEC to get poll allocation from CBN Tuesday. Details on page 16 of the Punch newspaper. And just beside the nameplate there, fuel queues may return as NNPCL depots run low. And these are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper.
And next we'll take a look at the business day and the big story on the front page. Buhari's rice success faces quality pricing hurdles. And it comes with certain riders here. It says why Nigerian rice is not competitive. That is on page 2. And of course, how FG's agri revolution spurs investment in rice. And that can also be found on page 2. Polaf polls tips Atiku to win in close race and over 3 million polled. That is another story on the front page of the business day. And the back page story is Nigeria's sovereign downgrade and what it means. Now, these are the stories on the front page of the Business Day newspaper this morning.
With that, we'll move on to the analysis of the papers. And in the studio today, we have Emmanuel Osemeke. He is a public affairs analyst joining us to review the headlines on the pages of the newspapers as we've reeled out this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning. My pleasure.
All right, so let's take a look at the lead story on Daily Trust this morning, talking about insecurity and credibility fears, may affect the voter turnout. So let's have your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think that is properly in order, given the cash crunch or the cash scarcity that has already brought a serious untold hardship to Nigerians. And you can see also that a lot of governors are making a lot of inciting statements, and that has also pushed people out on the streets. And last week we had in Edo State, Ogun State, I think Oyo State, there were a lot of skirmishes on the street, a lot of violent attacks, in banks, some protests and all that. So that's one area that I believe that the security agencies need to really seriously take a look at and begin to find ways to, correct before the Saturday election. So I think this is clearly in order, because if it's not taken care of, definitely it will affect the turnout of voters. Nobody would want to come out and receive either a machete or bottle or stray bullets from anyone just because they want to vote.
Well, but how do you feel that about the likelihood of some communities not being able to exercise their franchise come the elections, even though INEC has actually said right from time that every community, every ward in Nigeria will be able to, go to the polls when time comes?
Are you speaking to the 240 polling units? Okay, I think that came about as a result of the either inability of the specific community to get more than 4 registered voters, and sincerely, logistically, it does not make sense to deploy security forces, deploy INEC staff, deploy observers to a particular location just for 4 registered voters. So I think it's in order to be able to push, move people to different places. The specific area where I am registered to vote, I've actually been moved to another place, though not far from where I naturally would have registered. So I think logistically, I think INEC is in order with that. And of course, many of these locations are troubled zones. So looking at places in Woza, in Pulka, in Biu, some places in Niger State, so I believe this area, what INEC has done is correct.
Okay.
All right, now let's talk about the credibility issue now that was raised by Daily Trust this morning. I think lots of people might believe with the introduction of the BVAS and of course the real-time transmission of results that these credibility issues would have died down a little bit. I mean, like a lot of people might have more confidence in the election results. And do you think that will still affect turnout?
Well, the credibility of the poll is not limited to just the activities of INEC.
Okay.
The credibility of the poll, goes beyond the activities of INEC. You also have the security agencies. I mean, if you take a look at some of the headlines, I think there's a particular place where they talk about Najat and a few other people specifically monitoring police. That's an interesting one for me, because we've never had a situation where specific groups are saddled with the responsibility of monitoring the activities of the police. But beyond the police, you also have the NSCDC and the rest of them. If they are able to prove that they are apolitical and that they are there to secure lives and properties and not support a particular candidate, then of course definitely the credibility challenge will be put to rest. But you know that over time, if you look at the 2007 election, the security forces were accused, for being partisan and for suppressing voters. You also look at the election of, I think there's a senator from Imo State, the former governor of Imo State, who they supposedly said forced an INEC returning officer to announce. Of course, that was done using the security forces and all that. But of course, that case, I don't know if it's still in court or it's been dispensed with. So there are so many other issues that can, question the credibility of the poll beyond the Beavers issue.
All right, so let's move on to the cash crunch. We have a story that says Kwankwaso to APC governors saying your loot's now completely useless. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts, considering that some quarters also have accused some of these governors of, stashing away loot, and probably that's the reason why they're fighting the CBN, on this policy.
I mean, that's quite interesting for Dr. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso to come up with that kind of, should I call it punch, against his colleagues, or it's quite interesting, because the truth is, many of us have wondered why the governors, especially the APC governors, of course not just the APC governors, there's a lot of governors within the PDP fold who are also fighting the policy. But a lot of the APC governors are, they are cap in hand, fighting tooth and nail to ensure that at least the 500 and the 1,000 notes, becomes legal tender for the elections. And there's no other explanation you would give, if not the fact that people have planned to use those denominations. Whether they are starched or not starched, bottom line is that these particular people who are, vehement on opposing the broadcast of President Muhammadu Buhari shows clearly that broadcast, caught them unawares, one, two, messed up their plans. So there's no other strategy you want to bring in. And of course, for Kwankwaso to say that, it gives credence to the fact that the postulation by several, stakeholders that the governors have starched monies, is almost true.
All right, now the cash crunch issue is something that we've talked about for so long.
Endlessly,
we've been talking about it, and because it's at the forefront of anything. But we've forgotten its twin brother, so to speak, which is fuel scarcity.
Yes.
And right now we're seeing a story right on the front page of the Punch newspaper saying the fuel queues may return as NNPCL depots run low. When will we see an end to this, really? I mean, like, we've battled fuel scarcity for as long as we can remember. It took a step back a few years back, but now it's like a constant thing. Even now, I mean, there are still some places who are still in the crisis, and there's still no fuel there. So, and now we're seeing that they could return to the places that have seen it recede because the depots have run low. Is there an end to this?
I don't see an end to the fuel scarcity before the elections, even after the elections, possibly till the end of this administration. I don't see an end to it. Reasons are quite clear. Specifically for the FCT, you will recall that this fuel scarcity started from the polluted fuel. And from the polluted fuel, we got into the flood. From the flood, I mean, it never abated. So you probably have a 1 or 2 days that it looks like, oh, it's better. Then 2 days after, it resurfaces. Across the federation, fuel is sold between 290 naira to as much as 400, 450. Several places, go up north, go south. There's none, is exempted. Even in Lagos, where the fuel is supposed to be available all the time because of the proximity to the ports and all that, fuel is still sold as much as 300 to 320 per liter, subject to where you are located. And you can see clearly that it's either those who are managing the petroleum issues have run out of ideas, or that the level of corruption associated with the import and distribution of the petroleum product has become seriously endemic, and people are trying to cash out as much as possible before the end of this administration, because trust me, the PIA will come into effect shortly, and of course there's a new government coming. When a new government comes in, they are going to come with their own plans, strategies, and new policies on how to administer this petroleum policy. So definitely, when you look critically, you will see clearly that it's a Siamese twin of either incompetence and, of course, corruption that is taking place.
Okay, well, just before we go to the City and Crime page on Daily Trust newspaper, there's this story on Economic Insight talking about the federal government strengthening aviation security at airports, and also injecting 381 new personnel. Now, should the security at the airports be, on the front burner, or should these, airlines actually do a lot to work on their operations, because the aviation sector is actually marred by lots of flight delays, lots of flight cancellations, as we've seen over the weekend and all that, and a lot of people who actually pay monies to travel are really, really frustrated.
Well, we can never overemphasize the importance of aviation security, and there's no way we can even say we should put it, below the first priority. Aviation security must be a priority across every part of the world, especially Nigeria, where we are bedeviled with all manner of insecurities, man-made insecurity, and of course contrived insecurity. And that is not to say also that the delays associated with economic activities or through the airlines is not important. It is important, but I think the security of aviation security comes first, because if you don't have security within the aviation sector, the flights will not be safe. I believe that the federal government, who is responsible for aviation security through federal airport, is it the Federal Airport or Authority? They are responsible for that. I believe that they should do much more, because there's serious laxity, in all honesty, across our airports, whether it's state built, operated airport, or is the federal operated airport. Either of the two, aviation security is paramount, because a lot of, whenever you want to build on tourism, one of the critical factors that is considered, or one of the key performance indicators for even success in tourism in any given nation, is first of all aviation security. But it is also very important that the Ministry of Aviation, improves on their oversight functions. And of course, I usually don't like to push the legislators in terms of oversight function, because their oversight function does not really yield any serious, result. But there are specific agencies of government, and of course the ministries, who are responsible to ensure that operators within the aviation sector and provide all the needed and qualitative services that is required. It is wrong for passengers to plan their trips based on what the airlines have advertised, and you spend hours on ending at the airport in the name of operational reasons, which most often you are not even able to understand what operational reasons mean. But of course, this period we know that the dust and the Harmattan haze is also a major contributor to delays, in flights.
Cancellations. Okay, let's quickly move through the city and crime page. We have prisoner regains freedom after 6 years awaiting trial in Edo. 600 killed in 54 attacks on Benue local government, says Forum. 3 arrested for forging building plan approval. NDLEA arrest Chadian, 19 others. On Naira scarcity, hoodlums planning to unleash mayhem in Ogun State. This is attributed to the police. And we also have be ready to take corpses after 8 days, kidnappers tell relatives, which is a really, really sad one there. So these are some of the stories on City and Crime.
All right, now one of the stories that actually captured my attention there, it's the one for the kidnappers saying, given an ultimatum that if they're not paid in 8 days, they spend corpses. I think, what do you make of this? I mean, like,
it's scary
with the diary design policy and everything like that.
It's scary because the truth is that part of what we understand, is the reason for the redesign of the Naira is to curb kidnapping and ransom for kidnapping and of course banditry and the rest of them. And it is pretty unfortunate that even in the midst of these plans, we still have challenges of kidnapping. Now, what we don't know is that if this what did it happen before or after the Naira redesign? So suppose this particular family or this particular fellow who is kidnapped has money in the bank, where will he get the cash to give to these people? Because there's no way he's going to get cash. If he does have cash and he's trying to probably change to USD or any foreign, there's none. You have the cash crunch is not just limited to Naira now. It's gone across all denominations, all currencies that you can think about in Nigeria. So this is really, really very, very scary.
Yeah, well, part of the issues that people have actually raised that have contributed to the rising cases of kidnapping is the fact that the ransom actually gets paid.
Yes.
So it is believed that with the current cash crunch, if there's no cash, ransom is not being paid. I mean, the kidnappers will feel that it's bad market and they'll get out of it eventually. But there's still this issue of the fact that before we get there, what happens to the ones who are already kidnapped and they're not being, the ransom has not been able to be paid, like these ones that have been given an ultimatum.
Like I said, it's really unfortunate, and I feel for the fellow and of course for their family, because there's really nothing they can do at the moment, and it goes to say the level of performance of our security agencies. Because I believe strongly that as long as kidnappers use mobile telecommunication, they can be traced. And I believe that the security agencies, be it the Department of State Security Services or even the Nigerian police, they have this equipment. If they did not have it before now, they ought to have gotten it by now. Even without having the equipment, they can work with the telecom operators to trace the calls and know the specific locations, and they probably plan sting operations to be able to release some of this. And in the past, we've heard stories where the Nigerian police or other security agencies, plan sting operations and release some kidnapped persons. But it's not something you hear very often. Probably the ones that have happened is related to people who are probably very high in the society, unfortunately. But I believe strongly that this policy in the long run will benefit Nigeria and Nigerians. Today, the pain is heavy. The inconvenience is unimaginable. The proportion is unimaginable. But I honestly believe strongly that this policy in the long run will help the country. It will curb this kidnapping, because like you clearly mentioned, when you don't have success in some of the things you're doing, you most often will rethink your strategy. Of course, their strategy may change, but of course, the next strategy will expose them more. And yeah.
Okay, so just quickly before we wrap up, share your thoughts on this story on the Guardian newspaper that says Nigeria lost $825 billion to graft in 23 years, and this CSO actually said this.
You know, I think the last time I was here, we were talking about this Naira scarcity and all that, and we had a very lengthy conversation, and I clearly stated that there is a reason, there is a very specific goal, possibly one specific goal that President Muhammadu Buhari is trying to achieve with this redesign of the Naira. And one of the things I've come to understand is that there is a report before President Muhammadu Buhari on a lot of the investments that he's made, his administration have made, but the results does not show the volume of investment, and he feels he's saddened by it. And there were some level of investigation, and it was clearly realized that some people stashed monies meant for this, and as a result, that's one of the major reasons why, beyond the elections and all whatnot, you start money for specific reasons. So they may have started money for elections and the rest of them. But he was saddened from what I got, the report I got, by the level of corruption that heralded his administration, and of course previous administration. He's repeatedly said it from 2003, 7, 11, and 15 when he contested the election. He had consistently talked about the level of corruption that's held sway in the public space. So 23 years for that amount of, I'm sure it's more than that. This is actually probably what they are able to capture. There are reports over time, from, I think it was either from World Bank or from IMF, that talked about the volume of corruption monies that have been stolen from Nigeria, and is of unimaginable proportion. We've lost so much money, so much to corruption in this country. And because over the years, there's not been consequence for this level of stealing. Most people, when they are caught, either they get a slap on the wrist and they take a walk. Look at the issue of the immediate past Accountant General, where he was said to have misappropriated, or whatever the language was, over 100 billion. He's not in detention. He's done plea bargain, and he's chilling somewhere. So what this means is that if I get into office, I should steal as much as I can. When I'm caught, which most likely would happen, I come in plea, return some, and I can keep the rest of it. It's unfortunate. No society will survive under such a...
Sadly, Mr. Emmanuel would actually have to, end this conversation here. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning and analyzing some of these stories with us.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
All right, so that was Emmanuel Osemeke. He's a public affairs analyst. And with that, we will go on a break. And when we come back at the top of the hour, the show continues.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, it is 8 a.m. and of course this Daybreak on Trust TV. It's top of the hour, and of course the show has been rolling on since 7. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And I'm Darshan Husseina Usman. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, Ibrahim, the weather. There's been a slight change. The Hamatan is actually here on a February. Like, you know, a lot of people are actually surprised. A lot of people are not ready for this.
Yeah, well, a lot of people actually thought that we had seen the last of it after what happened in some parts of December at that time. And, well, it's making a comeback now. And I think it's all because of the climate change thing. I mean, like, the weather is actually changing everywhere. So it's not completely unexpected, but still, the timing actually took everybody a lot of people by surprise. And I think we're doing the best we can to cope with it, along with every other thing as well.
But there are actually reports that it might actually get colder as the month, you know, goes by.
But it's getting warmer.
Yeah.
Exactly, it is actually getting warmer because I mean, like yesterday, it wasn't as cold as the day before yesterday. So, well, maybe we'll just have to wait and see how it goes because the weather right now is really, really unpredictable everywhere you go. So we'll just have to wait and see. But right now, quite frankly, it's actually getting warmer in the past couple of days.
All right, well, let's take a look at the highlights at this hour. On 2023 polls, Southeast elders tasked authorities to stop killings.
400 billion naira cash. EFCC denies raiding Tinubu's home.
Iheanacho fires blank as Manchester United rout Leicester City.
All right, now just take a look at the details. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has denied raiding the home of the presidential flag bearer of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu. It also said it did not retrieve any 400 billion naira either from the candidate or his residence. It described a trending report in social media as fake news. And the Commission's head of media and publicity, Wilson Owujarem, made the clarification in a statement. The statement says the attention of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has been drawn to a report circulating on social media claiming that operatives of the Commission raided the home of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, standard bearer of the All Progressives Congress in the forthcoming presidential elections, and recovered a humongous sum of 400 billion naira.
Southeast have called on various authorities and security agencies to stop the ongoing killings and threat to the conduct of the 2023 general elections in the zone. In his message, elder statesman and chairman of the Council of Elders of Ohaneze Ndibo worldwide, Emmanuel Iwanyawu, cautioned all separatist groups in the southeast to give peace a chance so that the region can participate in the 2023 general elections without hitches. Now, similarly, former Minister of Health, Professor Ihe Chukwu Madubuike, said it was high time the legitimate authorities of the state began to show their strength and assure the citizens that no group of non-state actors would be permitted to disrupt the peace, especially the general elections in the southeast. Now, on his part, former chieftain of the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, Ralph Obioha, urged the residents of the zone to ignore any threat to boycott the general elections and come out to exercise their franchise, especially now that a candidate from the zone, Peter Obi, is contesting for the office of the president.
Meanwhile, in sports, Kelechi Iheanacho failed to continue his scoring form as Manchester United overpowered Leicester City 3-0 in a Premier League match on Sunday. Marcus Rashford has been the key to United's impressive form in Ten Hag's first season, and the England forward proved too hot for Leicester to handle at Old Trafford. Rashford has scored 24 times in all competitions for United this season, the highest goal tally he has ever managed in a single campaign. Remarkably, 16 of those goals came in the 17 appearances since he returned from the World Cup in December. The 25-year-old is also the first United player to score in 7 consecutive home league games since Wayne Rooney in 2010.
All right, with that, we'll move on to more stories. Emergency meeting of the All Progressives Congress, APC, and its governors ended in Abuja with a call on President Muhammadu Buhari to intervene and end the hardship being experienced by Nigerians. Now, addressing journalists shortly after the interactive session, which had in attendance the presidential candidate of the party, Bola Tinubu, also urged the CBN and Attorney General of the Federation to respect the Supreme Court ruling on the matter. Trustee Vice Shafiu Suleiman reports.
We note very seriously that the program and its implementation is causing tremendous difficulties to the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and to the national economy.
Now, recall that 3 frontline APC governors have approached the Supreme Court challenging the decision of the federal government to redesign the Naira note and, of course, the implementation of its cashless policy.
We urge the Attorney General of the Federation and the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to respect the Supreme Court's order of interim injunction, which is still persisting.
This is coming, few days to the presidential election in the country, which is holding on the 25th of this month.
The meeting is urging His Excellency, Mr. President, to intervene in resolving the issues that are causing these great difficulties to the people and to the economy.
From the APC Secretariat, Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News.
Meanwhile, the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, has given the police in Kano 24 hours to release its members or face statewide protests. Addressing news conference, the leadership of the party accused the ruling APC in the state of using the police to sabotage the forthcoming elections. Now, Trust TV correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that the party said police illegally arrested and detained more than 100 of its members in the state. Now, police could not be reached for comment at this time. Here's the report.
According to these leaders of the opposition New Nigeria People's Party in Kano, available evidence obtained by the party reveals that the state government is currently using the police commissioner to frustrate the party through illegal arrest and detention of their members across the state, an act they say will likely threaten the conduct of the elections.
At this critical time, any responsible government will be concerned with the fragile security situation as Nigeria heads to the 2023 general election in the next few days. While we appreciate the stand of President Muhammadu Buhari on his resolve to conduct credible elections through the provision of level playing ground for all candidates across all the 18 political parties in Nigeria, it is unfortunate that the Nigerian Police Command in Kano under CP Mamman Dauda is working deliberately and in cahoot with the Ganduja administration in Kano to subvert the elections.
Part of the NNPP latest demand includes the immediate release of their members currently under police custody, immediate redeployment of the police commissioner in charge of Kano Command, and a level playing ground for the peaceful conduct of the elections.
We wish to unequivocally state that NNPP is giving all the authorities concerned a notice of 24 hours to release all our members, stop harassing our members and leaders, and direct the Kano Police Command to stop campaigning for the APC. At the expiry of the 24-hour notice, we will lead all our members to a peaceful protest across all the 44 local government areas in the state.
Although the New Nigeria People's Party say it has still not lost confidence on security, officials neither plan to boycott the elections, but it's planning to withdraw its assent from the peace accord it has earlier signed.
We signed the pact because we love Kano, we love Nigeria. The intent of the peace accord is for us to have free, fair and credible election. Everybody must exercise his own part. Everybody must make sure that he protect the integrity of our laws. If police, who are the critical stakeholders in this election, after INEC, police are the most critical and they are biased, how can you expect us to continue respecting any peace accord? We can't do so. And we are sending signal to them for them to draw their attention.
In the next 24 hours, these party leaders and their supporters may likely storm the street of Kano if their demands are not met by the federal government and of course the ruling APC. Idris Jubrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
President Muhammadu Buhari on Sunday sent a message home from Addis Ababa saying he is fully aware of the hardships and policies of government which are meant to bring overall improvement to the country had caused and appealed for further patience as the government takes appropriate measures to ease them. Now, in a video recording to show up support for Bola Tinubu, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the upcoming elections a few days ahead, the president thanked Nigerians for electing him to be president for 2 terms, urging them to vote for the APC flag bearer.
Fellow Nigerians, God has once again brought us to another season of general elections across the country. I am therefore calling on all of you to exercise your franchise in a peaceful atmosphere. I am calling on specifically our traditional rulers, religious leaders, and parents to warn their followers and wards alike to not allow themselves to be used by a few to foment trouble. I want to assure you that the government has taken adequate security measures to allow everyone to come out and cast their votes. I am therefore appealing to everyone to give them the necessary support. Fellow Nigerians, I want to use this opportunity to once again thank you for electing me to be your president on 2 occasions. I am not a contestant in this election, but my party, the All Progressive Congress, has a candidate in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. As I mentioned before, Tinubu is a true believer in Nigeria, who loves the people and the development of our country. I am calling on all of you to vote Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is reliable, and I trust he will build on our achievements. Finally, I want to once again assure you that I am fully aware of the current hardship you are facing as a result of some policies of the government which are meant to bring overall improvement to the country. I am appealing to you to exercise further patience as we take appropriate measures to ease these hardships. God willing, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And right now, here is an analysis of the 2023 election, which is just 5 days away, as put together by Trust TV's Isa Abubakar. Let's take a look.
On the 25th of February 2023, eligible Nigerians will be going to the polls to elect their next president from the 18 candidates competing for the top job. Nigeria's Electoral Commission says there are 93.4 million registered voters across the country, the highest since 1999. Well, to understand how Nigeria has fared in the last 6 election cycles, let's walk you through the major political parties and see how the findings can affect the 2023 election. In 1999, Olufalaye of the Joint Platform of the Alliance for Democracy, AD, and the All People's Party, APP, lost to Olusegun Obasanjo of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Obasanjo succeeded with votes coming from Kaduna, Benue, Akwa Ibom, Niger, Rivers, despite Falaye's substantial votes from southwestern states. The 2003 polls were between Obasanjo of the PDP and Muhammadu Buhari of the All Nigeria's People's Party, ANPP. Obasanjo won with significant votes from the southwest and south-south, despite Buhari's chunk of votes from the northwest. Coming down to 2007, PDP's Umaru Musa Yar'Adua defeated ANPP's Muhammadu Buhari with votes mainly from southwest and south-south. However, Buhari maintained the high votes from northwest. Equally, in 2011, Goodluck Jonathan also defeated Buhari of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, with significant votes coming from southwest, southeast, and south-south, while Buhari maintained his vote from northwest. In 2015, Buhari's All Progressive Congress, APC, which sprouted from a major alliance between CPC, ACN, ANPP, along with a breakaway faction from ABGA and the PDP, catapulted his votes from the northwest, securing him the mantle of leadership in 2015. Now let's look at the changing tide. Trust TV observed a change in 2015 as votes from South-South, the winning streak of the PDP, significantly dropped. Abubakar Kari, an associate professor of political sociology, explains what led to this change.
Actually, there are so many reasons. One of the reasons, which is quite concrete, is that the voters register itself has not been reliable enough, particularly up to 2019. That there were a lot of fictitious named dead persons, underage persons, and so on and so forth. That is one very, very good reason, the unreliability of the voters register. So the truth is that many of those votes across the country were fictitious.
Meanwhile, in the 2019 polls between APC's Muhammadu Buhari and the PDP's Atiku Abubakar, Buhari maintained the same northwest as he did in 2015. Incidentally, votes from the south-south region, presumably PDP's stronghold, further dropped. Don't forget, Nigeria's registered voter rose by 61% between 1999 to date, while turnout reduced by 34.8%. Idayat Hassan of the Center for Democracy and Development speaks on the possibility of 2003 being a game changer for Nigeria's democracy.
There has been a decrease in voter turnout, but 2023 is being projected that it will have an increased voter turnout, particularly because of the number of young people who trooped out to pick up their PVCs to participate in these elections. But that itself is not a given. It will be predicated on a host of issues. How secure the country will be will determine how people will actually troop out to vote. In case of any tension, who will likely not turn out to vote. So again, their trust in this system. Do they believe that the elections will be credible enough? The perception of credibility that their votes will count will ensure that many people turn out to vote during the election.
Records show that the Northwest, with 22 million eligible voters, has the lion's share of the country's 93 million voters. The region is capable of making a dent on the election numbers, and so this is where all the presidential candidates are aiming to either win or reduce the margin of loss. The Southwest has 17.9 million voters, the North Central 15 million, and the South-South 14 million registered voters. Also, the Northeast has 12 million voters, while the Southeast lies beneath with 10.9 million registered voters. State-wise, every presidential candidate is aiming to get a chunk of votes from the following states: Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, Rivers, Katsina, and Oyo. These states make up to 29.6% of Nigeria's voting population. I am Isa Ismaila. Do follow us for more data stories.
Well, with that, we'll take a breather, and when we return, we will move on to our discussion.
documenting the Nigerian story.
Kai, my people, reason this thing now. When PDP day, our country be safe. Naira strong, economy they grow. Fuel, 7 naira, rice, 8,000. Our life in better, oh. When change people come, no work, no food, economy for gutter. Naija borrow, bad riches, foot down, Japan left and right, Sapa up and down. No need to gamble, say choice. PDP don't come, say choice. Recover Naija, say choice. We don't tire to suffer, say choice. Experience point, say choice. We don't want experiment, say choice. Get them right, say choice. This time our life, oh, say choice. Recover Nigeria, say choice. Atiku that demand, oh, say choice. Atiku Adogo, say choice. Are the only choice, oh, say choice.
Vote the safe choice to recover Nigeria.
PDP! Power to the people!
Now, PDP Presidential Campaign Council sponsored this message.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Daybreak this morning. Now moving on to our discussion. With more states joining the suit filed by some of their counterparts at the Supreme Court against the federal government, all eyes are now on the Apex Court ahead of the hearing on Wednesday, February 22nd. Now let's discuss this controversy and the imminent constitutional crisis this might create. And we have joining us in the studio a senior advocate of Nigeria, Sam Kabo. Good morning and thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so can you kindly explain to us the legal circumstances surrounding the suit instituted by the state governments, against the federal government in the Supreme Court?
Okay. You mean the one that was started by
the Kaduna and Kogi states, yes.
And Zamfara?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the grounds or the case they put before the Supreme Court is that the withdrawal of the 500, 200, 500, 1,000 naira notes as legal tender is unconstitutional and against the provisions of Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act. I think basically the crux is that the notice given by the Central Bank on the directive of Mr. President does not meet the requirement for reasonable time that is specified in that provision. I do not think, and I think I have read the papers that they filed, that is the originating summons they filed. I've also read the affidavit in support of it. They are not challenging the policy per se to say that the policy is not good. What they are saying is that the way the policy was announced and implemented, that is from the beginning to the end, does not meet the standard of the law. That's their case. And I think they took the case to the court, to the Supreme Court, because they believe that they have a dispute, and the dispute is between the state and the federation. And the law is that the court that has original jurisdiction over a dispute between the state and the federation should be the Supreme Court. But there's something that I need to explain here. The federation does not constitute the federal government. The federation constitutes the totality of what you call the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I think the person who personifies that entity as a human being, if the federation is to be reduced to a human being, is the president and not the government and not any arm of the government.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the legality of issues. The Supreme Court gave a date for judgment. Then they adjourned it again, and after that they released a statement saying that the monies remain, the notes, banknotes remain a legal tender up until the time that a substantive ruling will be given on that. A couple of days after that, the president came out and said something totally different. Now, what supersedes what, and is the president in right by virtually going against what the Supreme Court actually said? Is it that not grounds for contempt?
I will answer it this way. I'll be very cautious. Like we all know, the matter is still before the court.
Exactly.
And we are not supposed to go into the substantive aspect of it. I would only more or less talk about the procedure and the processes before the court and what happened before the court. There was a dispute before the court, and the plaintiffs then sought for an interim order, that is an order staying, or if I may call it, pause the implementation of the deadline from the time they instituted the case, I think about the 8th of September, to when the defendants, that is the defendant, that's the Attorney General, would have an opportunity to respond to the application on notice they have filed and served him. That application on notice is also going to be asked, and also asked for the same relief, but this time around is for an order, an interlocutory order between when that application is heard between them, when it would have been contested between them before the court, and when the case is finally determined. That was the order given. So it was expected that that application for the one on notice for the interlocutory order would have been heard on the 15th. You know, but it wasn't heard on the 15th because other parties had joined, and the rule is that once parties join a fray or a dispute or a case, they have to be given the opportunity to also file their own contribution. They will also have to be served the originating processes. The originating processes too would need to be amended to reflect their participation in the suit. That was why the matter was adjourned. So what is coming on the 22nd is the hearing of the motion on notice, which is seeking an interlocutory injunction restraining the federal government from implementing the deadline pending the determination of the suit. Or the court could say, okay, I hear both. Since you already have your processes, I will hear both and give a date for judgment. Let me recap. The first order was given was an interim order to say, don't implement the deadline pending the determination of the application on notice. And the one that was given, that interim order was given ex parte. It was given without hearing the defendant because of what? The shortness of the time that the federal or that the central bank had set for the implementation of the deadline. That is on the 10th. It remained only 2 days. If they had had to serve and wait for the defendants to come and contest the issue, then they would have had a fait accompli because the deadline would have elapsed. Yeah. So they give them that, and the law allows that if you have this sort of a nature of a dispute where the rest, or that is the subject matter of the dispute, is subject to some sort of impairment or peril, it is reasonable for the court to protect it. You know, that was what was done. So I would not know whether what the federal government or Mr. President acted upon is the belief that since the interim order, the adjourned date was on the 15th, then the interim order would have lapsed, meaning that the interim order asking for a stay had elapsed, and therefore he had what? The power to do what he wants to do, irrespective of the fact that there is still the case before the court, asking him to stay action on the deadline. If that is the thinking, I would say that in itself too may not be well advised, because the position of the law is that once you have a dispute before the court, and the dispute is about a specific subject matter, this time around the subject matter is about what? The deadline. The deadline for the cessation of this 200 and 500 and 1,000 naira notes being legal tenders. That is the deadline within which you can still exchange them for goods and services, or you pay debt for them. That is the dispute in court. The law is that once you have that dispute, you should, the two parties should not do anything that would affect that subject matter in any guise. And this has nothing to do with the merit of the case before the court. It is not the business of the court at that point to say, I can foresee that this case has merit or no merit. No, the law says, even if it's on the face of it the most frivolous or vexatious, as we will call them, case, stop, because the authority over that dispute is the court before whom the matter is presented, not for you to pick and choose an aspect of it to obey. This is why I think people are rising up in arms against Mr. President to say, even though you sounded benevolent, that benevolence in itself is an offensive patrimony. You patronize the court in a sense that you say, okay, since we have this matter in court, I can meet the court halfway. No, you can't do that. Your business is to say, okay, now that the matter is in court, let us wait. And in any case, there is nothing fundamentally crucial that would prevent you from waiting for the court to decide. Because in any case, your Attorney General has already filed papers challenging the jurisdiction of the court. And that issue is before the court. And if he succeeds and the court rules that, hey, I don't have jurisdiction, that ends it. And even if he says, I have jurisdiction, but on the merit, there is no merit before the court, that ends the case. But as it were, what if the court now holds that it has jurisdiction and the case is meritorious? What happens? Okay. You've already what? Inflicted a harm on the polity and on the people by what? By your own action.
Okay, so what about the controversial broadcast by the Kaduna State, governor, overruling what the president has actually said?
That's another kettle of fish altogether. And I think my earlier response to it here is that there's a sign of anarchy. Two wrongs don't make it right. Of course, Mr. President, like I said, my thoughts, not finished thoughts, and subject to what the court would say, is that Mr. President was wrong to have tampered with the subject matter of the suit before the court. But it is not in the place of Mr. Governor to say, hey, don't mind Mr. President, mind the court. The court is not a party to the case, and the court has done its bit, and whatever happens there has nothing to do with the court. So it is not right, and it's dangerous for us to have the people being confused with those sort of two directives, you know, because at the end of the day, it will trickle down to some other disputes as well. Tomorrow, somebody could say, since you do not obey the court, I will also not obey you, and I want to do something on my own. That's taking the law into the hands. No, you can't do that.
All right, I have a question burning at the back of my mind that I actually want to ask, but that will be after we take this break. Right now on Daybreak, do stay with us.
Hi, my people, reason this thing now. When PDP day, our country be safe. Naira strong, economy they grow. Fuel, 7 naira, rice, 8,000. Our life in better, oh. When change people come, no work, no food, economy forgotten. I got borrow, boundary tree foot down, Japan left and right, Sapa up and down. No need to gamble, say joy. PDP don't come, say joy. Recover Nigeria, say joy. We don't tire to suffer, say joy. Experience mind, say joy. We don't want experiment, say joy. Get them right, say joy. This time our life, oh, say joy. Recover Nigeria, say joy. Atiku na the man, oh, say joy. Atiku Anokowa, say joy. Na the only choice, oh, say joy.
Vote the safe choice to recover Nigeria.
PDP!
Power to the people! Now, PDP Presidential Campaign Council sponsored this message.
That's correct.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. And we're actually talking about the legal issues surrounding the Naira redesign policy, the case between the Supreme Court, before the Supreme Court rather, between some states of the Federation, of course, the federal government as well. So before we went on that break, I was actually saying that there's this question I wanted to ask. And I know you have to be careful of how you answer these questions, because you just said it's a matter that's before the court, and we should be careful how we do that. So my question now is, the Supreme Court has said one thing, the federal government has said another, and the date for determination of this case is the 22nd. So what happens now on the 22nd if the Supreme Court says we should extend this deadline, which the federal government has already said it's not going to? So doesn't that leave us in sort of a legal limbo?
No, it does not. You see, this is the way the court system works.
Okay.
If you come before me, you're asking for a declaration. My business is to either grant you the declaration or decline. And I'm not going to look at the facts after the process you have before me, because the court is presumed not to be out here with us to know what is happening.
Okay.
The presumption is that it has a case before it and facts supporting that case.
Okay. So as far as the court is concerned,
the court is concerned with. It's different from some other disputes. This is about a declaration to say what he did, was it right or wrong? Did he meet the law or did not meet the law? That is what is going to determine at that point.
Okay.
It's not going to say, but the horse has already left the stable and therefore this is an academic destiny. No, it's not. But for some other disputes outside those for declaration, yes, you could say the court should not act in vain because this is becoming an academic issue. Here it's about the court interpreting the action against the law and say whether or not it meets the standard of the law. Mind you, it is not just speaking to that particular case, but given an interpretation of provisions of the law, which is its own job. Once it has given that interpretation, it guides us as lawyers and the public as to how to understand that provision. So when next some acts are taken in the name of that provision, we the public, wherever you are, you already have a sixth sense as to how to judge that very particular act. To say the Supreme Court has said, if you did this, that does not meet the standard of the law regarding that very particular provisions. And the issue of whether or not Mr. President is in contempt or whatever it is, the court is not going to be activated by any other thing, by rumors or by public outcry, but by what? The parties. The party who took the matter to court, the plaintiff, who is the aggrieved person, is the person who has to activate the process. If he files papers for contempt proceedings and he proves the fact that indeed Mr. President has acted in contempt of the court, then the Attorney General will be cited for contempt. Mind you, cannot bring Mr. President to court. A sovereign cannot come to his own court. You're suing him as what? The embodiment of the status of the federation. So you don't bring him to court. You bring the Attorney General. That's what the law says. And that is why it's the responsibility of Mr. Attorney General to advise Mr. President accordingly. And let us also get this thing straight. I've had some commentators, some commentaries talking about and making conclusions regarding the merit of the policy. No court has any jurisdiction whatsoever to delve into the merits of a government policy. That is not its business. The people who are to tame that policy are the public, the people, not the courts. But what the court has power to do is to check whether or not the policy was made in accordance with the law. It's the procedure that the court is concerned with. So if you go to town crying that everybody should know that this policy is bad, or you go to town to say that everybody knows that this policy is good, that is not the business of the court. The court does not have that power. Because what? You are given a responsibility. Your responsibility is that of interpretation. The responsibility to act for and on behalf of the state in respect of all executive matters is that of Mr. President. If by his own wisdom has decided to fashion and implement a policy, it's for the people to cry him down, not for the court.
Not for the court. Okay.
Okay, now, some have actually accused the Supreme Court judges of abdicating their responsibilities, and adding to the confusion. Yes, to the confusion people are mired in, saying that they would have as well, finalized the judgment on the 15th of February instead of, dragging it.
That's unheard of. They could never have, because they don't have that power to do so. They have, you see, the symbol of our judicial process, our judicial system, or adjudicatory system is that of a blind woman. You are presumed not to know what is happening out there. You understand? The court had a case before it, and that case before it is against somebody. Those two parties have to come and slug it out before the courts, for the court to believe one and disbelieve the other. That is his own business, to say, from our own understanding of what the law says in these provisions, this person is right, this person is wrong. That is his own business. So what was presented before it on the 8th was the case, and as at that point, it has no power, no authority or jurisdiction, as we say, to judge it there and then, to say, I'm part of Nigeria, I'm part of this place, this is my judgment. No. You become what? Both a prosecutor and judge in your own cause. It is not their own cause. The case was brought before them by a litigant against another litigant. The first litigant has asked for a relief which they can give to say, now, before we hear this matter any further at all, these are the facts. If you do not stay it, then this case would have been made nonsense of by the time we come before you. The law says you can do that. And they've done that to say, between this time and this, Mr. Federal Government, stay. Then that order does not go into the merit of the case and does not in any way adjudge the policy in any form. It just says, stay till I hear somebody who has brought a grievance before me concerning that. Even if that grievance was brought by one notorious non-entity out there, as long as he has the capacity to sue. He's not a mad person. It's not somebody who is convicted or whatever, who is serving a jail sentence. That case will be hard. It's not going to go about the merits. And that's what the judge did. So there is nothing that complacent is there. If for anything, they did their job. And let's get this straight. The judges would always and for all time only say what the law is. The effect of the law, that's your business, you the litigants. How it affects every other person, because they are not meant to make judgment using their own intuition or their own experiences. If a judge witnessed something and the matter is brought before him, the worst he can say, because of my nearness to the fact, I will recuse myself. Let some other person judge it. I would rather want to be a witness in this case because what? I saw it. But beyond that, as long as you sit down and you hold the gavel as a judge, you are blind.
Right.
You could be agonizing there to say, this person, this clever rook is getting in his way. You have nothing to do but what? To give judgment according to the evidence before you. And most times, I pity them. A question is brought before them, they make the judgment. They kill them, they curse them, they abuse them, they've sold out, they are rogues, they are bandits. Unfairly. And most times it's come from lawyers who have turned activists, who make money out of the rostrum of giving the guys that they are for the people. There is nothing as cheap and easy as criticism. I have been a writer, a columnist from 1998 until 2019 when I said, okay, let me stop and face my application. I know what it is, how sweet it is to criticize. Easy. I write my back column. Within 2 hours, I've sent it. If I forget, the editor says, I have not seen your material. I say, I drop whatever it is, in 2 hours, it's there. Easy.
All right. Well, we look forward to
so easy
to the Supreme Court judgment on this matter, and we.
But mind you, on the 22nd, it's not going to be a judgment.
Yeah.
They are going to, if at all, if there are no other applications, if there are no other impending or pending matters, they are going to hear the issue for the interim injunction.
Okay.
If they hear it, they could also say, we've had this. Let us now hear the case.
Let's hear the case.
You understand?
All right.
There is also the issue, what they are even going to hear before even hearing the one on the issue of the preliminary objection. Because that is a threshold issue. The court must jump that hurdle first to say it has jurisdiction and that the parties who are before it have the locus and they have a course of action.
All right.
Those issues have to be determined first before you now go to the issue of the interlocutory injunction and the final, the case on the merits.
Okay.
Once the papers are in, the next, if they hear this one by that sequence, the next date may before the judgment.
All right. Ruling. Well, we look forward to all these processes coming to a conclusion, and of course, we make some headway concerning this particular policy. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Sam Kagbo, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
We appreciate all these legal insights you've given us, and of course,
thank you very much.
We look forward to having you again to determine certain issues again.
Anytime.
All right, thank you very much. And that's how we're going to wrap it up on a Daybreak this morning. We've had so much fun in the studio today, bringing it to you. Why don't we do it all again tomorrow? I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And I'm Darshan Husseina Usman.